let us begin with the lecture portion of our class today. And this, of course, is the Soul Path Community, our Friday class. And this session is called Deep Dive Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio is exactly square its ruling planet Pluto at 11:46 a.m. Washington, D.C. That means 8:46. It just happened here on the West Coast. So depending on where you are in the world, it is at a different time. But nevertheless, you can see it here. We've got the moon at 3 degrees and 3 minutes of Scorpio and Pluto in Aquarius at 3:3. Now, a square represents, all of astrology has to do with geometry, right? And whether the geometry is flowing and easeful or challenging and difficult. If it's challenging and difficult, then we're likely to have events that come up that force us to come up with a new creative solution to some kind of challenge. And I was thinking about how this is an interesting square because Pluto is the planet that is in charge of the sign of Scorpio. So, what kind of event might be coming up? And I was thinking that this is a little bit like a situation that you might have with a parent and a teenager, in that the parent, Pluto, is in charge of the teenager. And if the teenager is Moon in Pluto, maybe that teenager is having a really hard time emotionally and is feeling complex, intense feelings. And Pluto in Aquarius, the parent energy, is holding Aquarian energy. So it's holding more rational, detached, thinking function energy. The moon teenager is just emotional and intense and is feeling like, everything's going bad and the worst is going to happen. And so the Pluto Aquarius is kind of holding this energy of, okay, Pluto is like Scorpio, like we can go deep, we can figure out a solution, we can look underneath the current situation and figure some things out. But let's have a cool head about it. Let's manage the situation. And in that way, maybe put some stress and pressure on the moon to behave a little bit differently and to blend in some new and interesting way the rationality and the solution-oriented energy of Aquarius with a healthy respect for the depth and intensity and feeling state of the Scorpio. So that's just, kind of an example of how this works when you have two planets in a hard aspect to each other, but one of them is the dispositor or technically in charge of the sign that the other one is in. Now, you can see as we're looking at today's astrology that both the moon and Pluto have support. There's a trine of the sun, Jupiter in Cancer. So here we have this elevated, powerful, expansive energy in the sign of Cancer, which is a water sign like Scorpio. So it's emotional and deep and intuitive and also healing. And a trine, again, a flowing connection between Pluto and Venus, also Uranus out of sign. But here we have Pluto, which can have a lot to do with transformation and depth and intensity in a flowing relationship with Venus, the planet of relationship and resources. Recently, like look at that 00, just moved into the sign of Gemini. And Uranus in its very last couple of days in Taurus. So we've been kind of awakening to all Taurus energy since 2018. And that has been about the body, the earth, climate change, food, money, everything about the security, human, grounded function of Taurus. And now we're moving into this high frequency state where Uranus is going to wake us up more to the issues of education, communication, information. And we will be in a period for these next couple of years where Uranus, this planet of revolution and awakening, is in a flowing state with Pluto that's digging deep to help us uncover toxic hidden energies. And the only thing that's really giving me a certain amount of hope at this point in time, when it seems to me that things going on in the world are so hard, is the fact that these two planets were connected and joined in the mid 60s and launched progressive energies in every way, whether it was, women's rights, equality, uh, diversity, uh, LGBTQ energies. I mean, organic food, holistic healing. I mean, we could go on and on and on about all the different things that emerged in the mid 60s, including a vast interest in astrology and psychosynthesis and psychology. So the mid 60s launched and birthed these things. They've been tested from 2008 to 2020. And as Pluto and Uranus move into a trine, we hopefully have the flow and the fast connectivity between transformation Pluto and revolution and awakening Uranus. And so I'm committed to continuing as much as humanly possible to see that we have to go through this healing crisis we're in. We have to see so visibly the shadow forces, and that somehow we're going to move things forward for progress with this trine. And also, as you can see, it's in a sextile to Saturn Neptune, where we have another indication of major change brewing that has the potential to be compassionate and bring about new creative ideas that we build into the structure of our world, government, business, all of it. So we have this fascinating triangle. I keep talking about it, I know, in other classes, but it's worth repeating because there is a flow between these transpersonal energies, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, with Saturn in there, where Saturn is always pointing out where we have a structure in place that no longer serves who we are on a soul level, and we need to let go of what doesn't work and build what does work. And transpersonal energies and outer planets in our own lives and definitely in the world will signify major intense changes. And as I've said time and time again, we are going through changes in 2025, which is the shift year, the ramp up year. All of the outer planets will have moved signs by next year, and we'll have a clearer sense of where we're going. Though Pluto represents the urge for evolutionary transformation of psychological wound patterns into true power. Now, these psychological wound patterns, we're born with them. Like wherever Pluto is in your chart, it is carrying via the sign and the house placement a lot of information about the challenging lives you've been through, the healing you need to do, and what that outcome could possibly be when you truly come into your power. We can also frame this as Pluto represents personal desire to evolve to a powerful expression of group consciousness that's related to our generational destiny. So every Pluto sign represents a generation. And so we'll have, baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z. Each one is Pluto in a different sign. And we're going to get into that today because understanding your Pluto sign and what you're here to do helps you understand more clearly what's going on in your chart in the Scorpio area and what's going on in your chart by where Pluto is right now as it's in those early degrees of Aquarius. Now, what I have here is just a little information about Pluto's transit. So going back to October 11th, It went direct at 29, almost the very, very end of Capricorn. So that was the finishing of Pluto's transit in Capricorn that started in 2008. And we remember 2008 and 2009 because Pluto in Capricorn, first coming in, because when an outer planet first comes into a sign, you kind of get the curriculum and the intensity of it. And so came in to Capricorn, and immediately we had a worldwide financial meltdown. Banks, government, business, like everything in great upheaval. And just as it then came into Aquarius in May 2025, wait a minute. That should say oh, I know why I'm thinking about that. It came into Aquarius for just a couple of months in May 2023, and we got the a little bit of the curriculum because that was when AI being kind of launched in a much bigger way to the general public was noticed. So May 4th, 2025, this year, it retrograded at 349 Aquarius. So this year, Pluto has been going from 1 to about 4 degrees of Aquarius. That's the land mass in our charts that it's covering. When we come to October 13th, it will go direct at just a little over a degree of Aquarius. Mhm. And then next year, May 6th, it'll go retrograde again at 5. So the farthest it's going to go through all of 2026 is 5.5 degrees of Aquarius. So when you're thinking about Pluto and where it is right now, think about your chart and where the earliest first part of Aquarius is. This is where you're getting the strongest activation for transformation right now. And, we could also say that the early degrees of any of the fixed signs are also affected. So opposite Aquarius is Leo, and square is Scorpio and Taurus. Pluto exposes corrupted energies and circumstances. We can see this as psychological investigation that we do, but it can also be event driven. If we don't listen to the messages of Pluto, we usually pay for it with a very hard event that we have to live through to understand where we've had unconscious energies that are holding us back and keeping us stuck in our chronic karmic wounding. Pluto supports us in digging deep to uncover the root causes of things. Pluto doesn't leave things just on the surface with a simple explanation. We go deep, deep down inside. What does it do? It exposes shadow material. And what is disowned? Shadow material are like unconscious energies that we don't own as our own. And we either just like build like a scar tissue around it, trying desperately not to feel what's there, or we project it onto other people and we see them as the Plutonian scorpionic figures that can't be trusted, that are controlling, manipulating. Pluto drives us to be incredibly honest, sometimes ruthlessly honest, honest in a way like sometimes we have to pull in a little compassion and softness to truly speak our Plutonic truth. And in all of this, Pluto is transmuting our wounding into true power. And you'll find that wherever your Pluto is, it can operate as control and manipulation or powerful integrity. And these things are all related to the sign of Scorpio as well, that the planets that we have in Scorpio will also have this tendency for digging deep, being honest, and either being controlling or powerful. And with Pluto processes, it feels like death and rebirth. It can feel like we have to make the right decision, or literally it feels like we'll die, which is not true that we'll die, but the ego is dying. The part of us that's held on to our wound has to die so that we can be reborn as a powerful being. Now, the key Pluto questions, and as I go through these, and I know in some other talks we've talked about this before, but think about it today in terms of Aquarius in the house that you have Aquarius. So probably one or two for some, if you're in a far north or far south latitude, you can sometimes have one sign in three houses, but usually it's one or two. What defense mechanisms am I ready to evolve? Where can I make a difference in the world? What is the true purpose of this life, right? A big one. Where am I caught in fear and subconscious motivations? Can I face that fear and painful emotions fiercely? And I often say when people are going through Pluto transits, one of the most important things to do is to face your fears and do the things you're afraid of. How can I dismantle unconscious disempowering patterns? And what needs to die in my life so I can be reborn? All of those questions are being addressed now in an Aquarian way. And Aquarius has a lot to do with high frequency thinking, uh, in what's the word I want to use? Um, Developing things, inventing things, having breakthroughs, being rational, detached, but not so much that we lose our empathy. But having kind of a clear mind and understanding our connection to the collective, to the whole. This is where Pluto in Aquarius is asking us to make a difference and understand our purpose and understand like where we have fear. There can be fear of the group energy, and especially if we've had challenges in previous lives with, groups betraying us. When we're doing our Pluto work consciously, we will do the things that scare us. The psychological shadow work will face truth, we'll have integrity, will transform our wounds, and ultimately we develop this true power. But when we have unconscious Pluto, or we're looking around at our world and we see people with unconscious Pluto, there will be a plethora of unexamined emotions, the intense ones: fear, pain, shame, rage, uh, just sometimes being frozen with the intensity of them, or acting them out in ways that are really harmful. We might experience accidents, illness, violence. Certainly, power struggles will come up around unconscious Pluto, or even being in a Pluto transformative uh, cycle. We will have at least some level of power struggle with others, and we'll find ourselves in what seems like impossible situations and may be prone to conspiracy theories and distrust. Because of what we're aware of what Pluto is capable of. So as we have Pluto in Aquarius, we can look forward ultimately to transformation and empowerment of humanitarian agendas, associations, community, tribe, people that are connected. Uh, Pluto and Aquarius is meant to bring us equality, equity, innovation, technology, and as a little side note, more and more interest in astrology, because Aquarius is a sign that is associated with astrology and channeling and certain, kind of progressive ways of connecting to the cosmos. Uh, and, as we're working through Pluto and Aquarius, we're looking for where's the corruption, what's dead and decayed, and where are the secrets and hidden agendas that are underneath what we think are humanitarian or innovative uh, technological processes. So we're on one hand looking to expand the best of everything Aquarius, but we also have to be mindful of what is toxic in the sign of Aquarius. And ultimately, as in every Pluto transit, which Pluto's transits can be anywhere, it's an elliptical orb, so it's not like it's going around in a circle in an even way. We will have sometimes Pluto in a sign for 11, 12 years, and sometimes 25 or more years. And as we're going through the process, there's this phoenix rising from the ashes of what got completely demolished during the Pluto first part of the transit. So we see already, this new paradigm, these new causes, issues, concerns that are rising out of the ashes of Pluto being in Capricorn, melting down our system and exposing the corruption of this patriarchal government business system. Now we have to face climate change. We see the royal family in the UK may not survive this. Even, women's protests around the world, even in Iraq, fallout from Brexit, social justice, policing, um, and climate change twice. Yeah, this is like really important. Wars and refugee issues, capitalism unfettered, the problems with that, fascism and authoritarian regimes. We see that everywhere. I need not say more. And even ETs, everything that has been hidden by authorities is now coming forward. And we're looking at, what makes a better world? What would equality look like? And there's kind of an interesting aspect here that although we think of Aquarius quite often as progress and people being weird, getting to do what they want to do, and, sort of diversity and life unfolding. Fact is, in traditional astrology, Saturn ruled both Capricorn and Aquarius. So Aquarius does also have this quality that some of us more positive-minded astrologers will want to overlook, which is the tendency to cold, rational, non-empathic ways of thinking and ways of living. And so here we get the potential with Aquarius for uh, equality that's kind of enforced in certain ways. And I often use as an example when communism first came to China and everybody had to wear those little gray suits so they all look the same. And we often see that in rebellious populations in the West, where we'll notice like all punk rockers dress the same, all bikers dress the same. It's like here they are sort of rebelling against the norm, but do it in a way so they can find each other and see who each other is and kind of demonstrate by the way that they look that they are part of a tribe, part of a community. So we have this way that with Aquarius, we break free and we let go of our association to the standard tradition. But then we then lock into this rebellious group that all operates the same and has a certain belief system and way of looking. And we see that everywhere. Now, here are the approximate dates of the Pluto generations. So you can look at that and see what generation you are around the turning point. If you are born in any of these years, that is at the beginning or the end of a Pluto generation, you're going to need to check your chart exactly to see what sign your Pluto is in. And this Pluto in Libra generation, which was just 11, 12 years, this is a generation that is often overlooked by sociologists who put half of them in Generation X and half as millennials, but it's a very different group of people. Now, with Pluto in Aquarius, the aspect between Pluto will form different kinds of vibrations to each generational group. So if we start with the oldest people, the Pluto in Cancer generation, known as the Great Generation, there's a quincunx, an uncomfortable connection between the Aquarian energy and Cancer. And that's also true here for Gen X, Pluto in Virgo. This is uncomfortable. The new paradigm of Aquarian principles doesn't fit very easily, and there has to be a titration back and forth to understand and work with it. For baby boomers, Pluto in Leo, there is an opposition forming. This is something that happens really toward the end of life, that you get an opposition of Pluto, and that's challenging. There has to be a compromise. The sign of Aquarius is completely different than the sign of Leo. The two generations that are most comfortable, most likely, with this phase will be the Pluto in Libra, the Generation Y or hipsters, where it's a trine, or the Gen Z, Pluto in Sagittarius, who tend to be kind of excited about the radical changes that could come and maybe less afraid that some of us might be, that things we know and trust are being disrupted. And it's always important for me when I'm saying this to just send the message again and again that my spirit guides have been telling me for 20 to 25 years not to worry about the changes going on in the world and to tell everybody to stay in your hearts, to stay connected to the people you know who are bringing about a compassionate, better world, and realize that as we watch the system and the structure crumble, it's going to be frightening because it's going to be so different than anything we've experienced. And we hang on to change. It's like they say when children are taken away from their families, abusive families by CPS, that they will cling on to the abusive parents because they, don't want to go from family, from what's familiar. So we're all experiencing that now with having so many outer planets change. Of course, we're going to be terrified about what's happening and think it's bad. It's just automatic to, mostly prefer what we've been used to. And here we have the generation that I think is really coming into their power and coming into a whole new phase, and that is millennials, Pluto and Scorpio. And most of us, if we're older than that generation, we experienced our Pluto square Pluto in our late 30s, maybe early 40s. And this is slowly happening now. The older millennials are already in their Pluto square Pluto. It is one of the most challenging transits that we have in a life. It takes at least 3 years. And it is the coming into your personal power and accepting the challenge of your destiny to do what you're here to do in alignment with your generation. And millennials, Pluto and Scorpio, are here to be part of this major empowering transformational work that needs to be done for this civilization. Now, I have some, cute little slides here for each generation to kind of quickly go through what each one is about. Pluto in Cancer is about exposing false conditional family values. This is our parents and our grandparents, many of us, who pretended that that family was wonderful, but there was a lot of shadow material about family. Pluto and Leo, baby boomers, exposing the corruption of overconsumption, narcissism, and shallowness, while transforming to the power of creative expression and creation of new paradigms. Gen X, exposing corruption of resentment and denial, transforming to the power of solving the Earth's problems, healing technology and systems, environmental consciousness, devotion, which is a Virgo quality. So this is the soul group that really came here to build out the changes that baby boomers created to start with. Pluto in Libra, this little lost generation, exposing the corruption of plight society, indecision, and relationship dysfunction, and transforming to the power of equality, peace, justice, and collaboration. Pluto in Scorpio, millennials, exposing the corruption of power in all systems, hidden agendas, secrets, inequities, and social injustice, transforming to the power of radical honesty, facing fears, developing integrity and power. Gen Zs, Pluto and Sag, exposing the corruption of religions and belief systems, transforming to the power of knowledge, politics, laws, and a world frontier. And we will see in these upcoming years that many Pluto and Sag and millennials are taking powerful roles in the government. And Pluto and Capricorn, the younger ones at this point, um, planetary leaders, a lot of them I've seen have not lost their awareness and their knowledge from past lives. They keep a lot of their talents and they are as Capricorn tends to be, anyone with strong Capricorn as a child, you know that you were the adult in the room when you were 4 and had a lot of grounded energy to bring. So this generation exposes the corruption of tradition and patriarchal structures, transforms to the power of true stability and structures that are built to last under a new paradigm. This is a generation that is going to oversee the building of many of our new ideas. Now, coming to the sign of Scorpio, when your planet in Scorpio is evolved, uh, it's operating from a powerful soul-centered vibration. There's integrity, honesty, and you are transforming yourself connected to that planet, and you're also capable of being transformational for other people. On an average level, planets in Scorpio will operate in a way that's intense, exposing, kind of complicated, uh, very psychic. There's like a piercing vision with Scorpio. Scorpio will see things and then dig deep and investigate and research underneath and research with facts and data as well as psychically research. But Scorpio can also be controlling, operating through a planet. And then the shadow of Scorpio will be manipulation, corruption, cruelty, rage, certain paranoia, shame, destructiveness. And there are actually 4 symbolic animals for Scorpio. And starting with the scorpion that will sting you, the snake that sheds its skin to come into its next level of growth and next level of growth. The eagle that's the teacher and flies high and sees, with that, 300-foot viewpoint, looking down and seeing the details. And the phoenix, the mystical creature that rises from the ashes. And that's the highest level of Scorpio, is this magical transformation through the flames into power. So if you think about your planets in Scorpio, the sun, which reflects personal power, choice, self-esteem, leadership, vitality. The sun is your CEO of the chart. If it's operating in Scorpio, then those Scorpio qualities I just went through, that's telling you how you are operating from a place of power is in this powerful, transformational, integral way. You are constantly engaged in transformation so that you don't fall into control, manipulation, and secrets. The moon represents security, nurturing, healing, the family. And so the way we feel in the Scorpio moon is deep, intense, empowered by being honest with ourselves and others. Mercury, we know, is the planet of communication, learning, teaching, our intelligence style. So if Mercury is operating through the lens of Scorpio, we will communicate in an honest, deep, transformational way without necessarily even trying hard. If we teach, we're going to make sure that we're teaching all the details and going underneath the surface. Venus is the planet that represents our ability to attract and stabilize relationships and also money and resources. If we're doing that in a scorpionic way, we are doing it again powerfully and transforming, deep, intimate. People with Venus in Scorpio need and want more intimacy than the rest of us understand. If we don't have Venus in Scorpio, we don't know what they're talking about. If you're in relationship with someone who has Venus in Scorpio, and you might think that it's a great relationship, they're wondering what's missing. They're looking underneath the day-to-day relationship to understand, where there's more depth. Mars, the planet that takes us forward into action, is all about will and desire, makes things happen. If it's doing it in a scorpionic way, it is complex, deep, transformative, powerful. Jupiter represents the seeking of truth and meaning, expansion and generosity. If we do that in a scorpionic way, it's those two signs are, like Jupiter rules Sagittarius, Scorpio's next to it. When signs are next to each other, they're very different than each other. So Jupiter in Scorpio is trying to be expansive and optimistic and positive, but it's operating through a sign that generally is not positive and optimistic. Scorpio is seeking this kind of truth that defies hope or hopelessness and goes into reality and intensity. So Jupiter in Scorpio will take you into some deep learning, often into spiritual disciplines that have a lineage to them and very serious ways of learning. Saturn, accomplishment, mastery, success, the part of us that's, understanding the boundaries of the real world. And in Scorpio can be very, very powerful and will leave nothing unturned. Will work hard and to build things, and we'll see things that are under the surface of the foundation and build a deeper foundation. Uranus in Scorpio, Uranus is seeking authenticity, radical change, freedom, rebellion in Scorpio. That is kind of an uncomfortable way to try to operate, but there will be a seeking of freedom and liberation through deep, intense relationship, through sexuality, through intimacy, through bonding at a deep psychological level. Neptune shows us our seeking of oneness, transcendence, creative expression in that transcendent way, imagination, what we're able to call on from the cosmos. And in Scorpio, it takes it from that nebulous, high frequency spiritual place into very, very deep, experience. A little bit like Jupiter in Scorpio, there will be a need to study belief systems that are filled with longevity and nothing too airy-fairy or woo-woo with Neptune in Scorpio. And then finally, Pluto in Scorpio is like power in power. Pluto is transforming, again, honesty, integrity, power, and doing it in a scorpionic way, in the way it wants to. And so there's nothing holding this back. However, sometimes it can be too much. It can be overwhelming. To people who have Pluto and Scorpio, their ability to see truth and to see the corruption and the lies that are underneath can be anxiety provoking, can be painful, and just bring about a certain cynicism and despair. So to keep transforming and come into that power fully is the challenge of people with Pluto and Scorpio. I don't believe that you can heal Scorpio and Pluto very easily by yourself. It helps to have psychotherapy, somatic healing, shamanic healing, kind of depth inner processes. Yeah, at a minimum, honest, hard conversations. 12-step programs can be helpful. And again, spirituality that has lineage, that has depth and intensity. So if you have a lot of planets in Scorpio, if you have Scorpio South Node, if you right now are dealing with this Pluto transit in a particular hard way, keep in mind that reaching out for support is probably necessary. So the question of where is it in your chart is a deep question, and one of the things that I truly wanted to bring forward in this class. So often we think about our charts piecemeal. We think about the planet I have in Scorpio or the house that Scorpio rules. The angle, those are the four main um, cusps in the chart, right? Self, family, partnership, and career. The angles are really extra powerful. So if one of those is in Scorpio, this is a particularly important concept for you to understand. If Pluto is aspecting planets in your chart, especially personal planets, then they are being Plutonized, and it's important for you to understand what Pluto is doing in that natal chart connected to your personal growth and evolution. So we will think about as we go into charts, where's the natal Pluto? What does that mean about your generation, your destiny, and your evolution? Uh, if there are planets in angles in Scorpio, and uh, if there are planets that are aspected by Pluto, and and then we're looking at the Pluto transit right now while it's in Aquarius, that's where it is doing some work. And as it does that, the your natal Pluto is evolving, and therefore the houses that are ruled by Pluto, the Scorpio houses, they will be stronger afterward. They will do better. Things in your life will go better in that area. So there's a way that everything is connected. And the more you're aware of these pieces, the more you can understand what is actually happening in your personal evolution. And it won't feel quite as overwhelming as it sometimes can. So as we go into, let's see, we have time maybe for one chart. And yes, this is my final slide. Still have a few upcoming talks. I would like very much to go into a chart. I'm going to stop the share.